Okay, I know what you're thinking. Looks washed, he's rehashing content people have done for like 8 years already, but hear me out, okay? The most damage possible videos you've seen before, they're all either wrong or incomplete, probably on purpose, to be honest, to mislead you. But I would never do that to you. I would, look at me, I would never do that to you. So let's find out what the actual most damage possible is together. Okay, the most damage possible in one attack. Let's go. We can try solve this problem by viewing it as a series of questions, or open slots in one of those really hard jigsaw puzzles with multiple pieces fitting together, but only one is actually correct. We know the scope and limits of a Pokemon battle well by now, so let's start by defining these questions and then answer them one by one. A double battle in Gen 9 can have, you guessed it, 2 Pokemon on either side. So there's question 1. Which 4 Pokemon are we using? Which will be our attacker, which will be our victim, and then which 2 Pokemon will play support? We can't really answer this question until we answer the next, which is, which moves are we going to use? We can only use one move to deal the damage itself, but there's 3 other Pokemon on the field who aren't just going to sit around with their thumbs up their asses, so we need to decide which moves they're going to use and if they're going to augment our attack damage or the target's defense. Moving on, which items are we going to use? Very few items can increase the damage of an ally or increase the damage received from an attack, so really we're just asking about the item our attacker is going to be holding, and there are several different items that boost attack power, so choosing the right one is critical. What about abilities? These are not as tied down to individual Pokemon as you might think. It's fairly trivial to move around abilities of Pokemon using moves like Skill Swap, Entrainment, and Roleplay, and there's a bunch of helpful ones we need to pick from for our attacker and the other Pokemon on the field to help boost damage. Okay, finally, we need to figure out what state our Pokemon and the battle in general need to be in for maximum damage. This includes things like stat changes, but also if any statuses or field effects will help us in any way. Alright, we have our questions. Pokemon, moves, items, abilities, battle state. Let's start answering them one at a time, but before we do, did you know that if you reach 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, they send you out a free slab of aluminium? Yeah, that's the main reason I became a YouTuber. I'm all about the scrap metal. Only about 16% of you watching right now are subscribed, but if even half of everyone watching this right now click that subscribe button, we'd be well on our way to getting me my free slab of metal. If you believe in my dream to acquire a large amount of an extremely versatile metal for absolutely free, you know what to do. Tell you what, you can even unsubscribe once they send it out. What are they going to do? Take it back? I'm already going to melt it down into brackets, I mean. Anyway, let's get back to the video and start answering those questions. Let's start with the question of which move to use, because this one is pretty easy actually. Back in the day, the answer to this question was a fully powered rollout, a move which doubles in power every turn it's used to a maximum of 480 base power, which was by far the highest base power of any move in the game, beating out the next strongest, Explosion, by nearly double. I say it was the highest because this is no longer the case. In Gen 9, the move Last Respect was introduced. This move starts at 50 base power and increases its strength by 50 for every ally Pokemon that faints in a battle. This, of course, under normal circumstances would only let us increase to a maximum damage of 300 after 5 Pokemon faint. However, one more move they introduced in Gen 9 is the move Revival Blessing. This move can bring back any fainted Pokemon to 50% HP, and while it only has 1 PP, there's any number of ways to make sure the move is infinitely repeatable. And yes, each feint after the 5th does still increase the power of Last Respects. It does still have a limit though, so no infinite damage is possible with it, but if you cycle through reviving and knocking out Pokemon until you hit the cap, you can get slightly above the power of Rollout with a clean 5,050 base power after 100 feints. Okay, with the move of our choice obviously being Last Respects, we now know our attacking Pokemon has to be a Pokemon that can learn Last Respect or use it through a move like Mimic, Copycat, or in a pinch, Metronome. Please, hopefully don't be that one. Something important that we learned from the least damage video is that we don't actually care all that much about the attack stat over attacker, because we can use Power Split. This move takes the base attack of the user and the target, averages them out, and sets both Pokemon's attack stat to that average. We can use this move, switch in and out our high attack Pokemon, and do it again 9 times in a row to make any Pokemon we like have an attack equivalent to any other Pokemon. However, if you take a look at the stats of all Pokemon, you'll notice that the highest defense stats in the game are actually higher than the highest attack stats. This means that instead of using Power Split multiple times to copy an attack stat, we should use Guard Split, which works identical to Power Split except with the defense stat. Shocker, I know. We do this on a high defense Pokemon and use the move Power Trick as well, which swaps the base attack and base defense stats of our user, ensuring our base attack is the highest it possibly can be. We unfortunately can't use Shuckle or Mega Steelix for this of course, because they don't exist in Gen 9, but with Regirock at 200 defense, it still gets the job done. This likely will not come as a surprise to regular viewers of the channel, but it's looking like the Pokemon of choice for our attacker is going to be Smeargle, since there's very few other ways to get a Pokemon to use Last Respect, Guard Split, and Power Trick without doing some sort of setup using Copycat multiple times or using Metronome, which I'm not doing. Unfortunately, despite my best efforts, nearly every one of these videos ends up using like 14 Smeargle for these elaborate setups, but ideally not every Pokemon on the field has to be a little art dog. This is something to keep in mind as we answer some other questions, like what moves are our other Pokemon going to use? This one's actually extremely easy, because Helping Hand is effectively the best move in the game for increasing an ally's damage output, multiplying damage dealt by 1.5. For the two Pokemon on the opposing side, while we can't use Helping Hand on an enemy Pokemon, we can use Instruct, which forces a target Pokemon to repeat its last move. Crucially, only the enemy who is not being attacked for the big damage is going to use Instruct, because the victim has a much better option for increasing damage in Glaive Rush. The signature move of Baxcalibur, this move has a great damage output, but has two main drawbacks, the first of which being that it looks ridiculous, and the second one, the part that we actually care about, is that until the user takes its next turn, it will receive double damage from all attacks. Of course, we need a Pokemon with a defense of 1 after stat drops, so obviously we can use Baxcalibur for this, since we need something around level 1. This makes our options some Pokemon using Copycat, or another Smeargle. I hate to do it, but I'm just going to do the easier and less visually stimulating thing and use a Smeargle, I'm sorry. We'll need to make sure that it's 4 times weak to Ghost type attacks, so we're going to use the move Reflect type on a Lunala to make Smeargle Ghost Psychic type. To my knowledge, there are no abilities that increase the damage received from moves that we can put on the victim's Smeargle, so I'm going to give it the Insomnia ability with Worry Seed. If we can't increase the actual damage, we can at the very least deal some extra psychic damage by giving it an anxiety disorder before we kill it. In terms of abilities that have a tangible effect on the damage output, our attacker will have the Huge Power or Pure Power abilities. They're completely functionally identical and they double the attack stat of the user, so that's pretty simple. One more important ability that many others forget about when doing this most damage calculation is Power Spot, the signature ability of the extremely forgettable but extremely cute Stonjourner. Power Spot increases ally damage by 30%. In terms of items, we have a pretty easy job. There are no items in the game that increase the damage received by the holder, nor do any items increase an ally's damage. Therefore, the only item we care about is the one held by the attacker. While you might think that the obvious choice is a Choice Band, one item can situationally increase move damage even more, the Metronome. Holding this, each time the same move is used consecutively, the move deals 20% more damage to a max of a 100% increase. The move does have to be used successfully each time, however, meaning we're going to have to use some sort of setup, such as using Endure or using it on our ally Pokemon to make sure we don't run out of valid targets before we use it on the victim. Alright, last question on our list, and it's the most open-ended. Battle State. To reiterate, by this I mean any stat changes, statuses, terrain, weather and room effects we can use to our advantage. Of course, our attacker is going to have +6 attack and our victim is going to have -6 defense. Beyond that, we have to make sure our attacker is the Ghost type by using Conversion, so we can Terastallize into the Ghost type for double stab. The only other factor that helps us here is landing a critical hit, so we're going to make sure our attacker has a Focus Energy effect while attacking, so we have better odds of critting. Mostly because I really don't want to do this setup more times than I have to. 100 KOs is so many KOs. Alright, now we've got it all worked out, let's set everything up. Our first order of business is to make sure Last Respect is at full power. We can do this pretty efficiently by giving a Rabska the Harvest ability, setting up Sunny Day, then Arboliva using Memento every turn immediately followed by a Revival Blessing. Arboliva will be revived, the Lefa Berry will be consumed to restore the single PP of Revival Blessing, then Sunny Day will guarantee that Harvest will activate to regenerate the berry. Rinse and repeat 100 times and we have a fully charged 5050 base power Last Respects. Next step is to get our attacker readied up. We set up a Blaziken with Focus Energy and Sword Stance, while at the same time swapping the Power Spot ability onto Oranguru. Blaziken Baton passes out to Smeargle and Meditite skill swaps Pure Power onto Smeargle. We have to make sure Smeargle is Ghost type for extra Terastallize stab, so we use Conversion, which sets our type to the type of the move in our first slot, that being Last Respects. Next, we have to make Smeargle's attack equal Regirock's defense. We use Guard Split, swap Regirock in and out, and repeat 8 more times to reach 547 defense. The last bit of setup on the attacking side of the field is to swap Power Spot onto Arboliva before Oranguru switches out. Nearly there, we just have to use Screech to set our victim's defense all the way down to a single stat point and Reflect type to make it 4 times weak to Ghost. Finally, we use Last Respect 5 times on various Pokemon that aren't the Victim Smeargle to ensure Metronome fully increases our damage output by 100%. And Victim Smeargle uses Glaive Rush for a staggering 3 damage, and now we're ready for the final turn. Smeargle terastallizes, Arboliva uses Helping Hand, and Oranguru uses Instruct to make it repeat the same move again. Finally, Attack Smeargle uses Last Respect on Victim and probably just about manages to get the 1-hit KO. Crit probably mattered there. Let's plug our numbers into the damage calculation and find out just how dead this dog is. Here's the equation without any of the multipliers, so let's plug in our variables. Our level is 100, our attack stat is 457, which is multiplied by 2 from pure power and 4 from our stat changes, so our final attack is 3656. Our move power is 550, multiplied by 1.3 from Power Spot to become 6565. The last variable here we care about is the target's defense, which is exactly 1. If we calculate this out, we get 20,161,380 damage, before any modifiers. We then take this number and multiply it by 2 for Glaive Rush, 1.5 for the crit, assume we hit for the max damage roll, so we just multiply by 1, multiply by 2 for Stab, 4 for Super Effectiveness, 2 for Metronome, and 1.5 for Helping Hand twice. This gives us a final damage total of 2,177,429,040 damage. Thank you so much for watching, I really hope you enjoyed. A huge shout out to my supporters on Patreon, especially at least 8,700,000 Ants, Chaos Lord Drago, Sean Colgan, and Zed the Man, and also Avery Bunn, Eamon Crawford, Frostfucks, Peter Clare Lomax, The Dirt Man, and Where is Spacebar, and everyone else you see here. Spent a little bit of time doing a little bit more editing this time, so hope it's noticeable, hope it's appreciated, hope I didn't overuse the 3D screen scroll effect a bit. I felt like I was kind of pushing it by the end, but whatever. I do really hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.